Chapel Church, do you love Jesus? No, seriously, answer the question. Do you love Jesus? And I think I know what most of you would have just said if you actually answered out loud, because I think that we're probably getting a pretty specific demographic of people to watch these videos. So I know what your answer will probably have been. But let me ask you one more time. Do you love Jesus? And by this time, you might be thinking, what are you trying to reenact like Jesus and the conversation that he had with Peter in John chapter 21? That would be a good one to read again and think about that question very carefully. Do we love the Lord? We know what the right answer is, but here in Psalm 31, David says in verse 23, he gives it out as like it's spoken like a command or an exhortation. Love the Lord, all his saints. And you might be thinking, well, isn't that the very nature of being a saint? Of course we love the Lord. And yet, why the instruction? We have to ask the question, church, do we love the Lord? Just like Jesus asked Peter, do we love him? And I sometimes think, but we know what the right answer is. So what does it mean to love the Lord? Think about what Jesus said to the church in Revelation. To this church who had been faithful in Revelation chapter 2. To the church in Ephesus, they had been faithful, they were persevering, they were doing it, church. They were not giving up, they had not grown weary, and yet what had happened? They had forgotten their first love. It's a little bit like, maybe if you want to compare it to a marriage, it's like a couple who's been married for like 60 years. And if you tell them love each other, you might think, well, of course they love each other. But it could be that they've slipped into a place where they're just living together, but their love has actually grown cold. Church, do we love Jesus? Or has our love started to grow cold? Jesus warns in Matthew 24 that one of the signs of the end times is that people's love for God is going to grow cold. It's a sober warning for us, church, and a good question to ask. And you might even spend some time there with the Lord and say, Jesus, how could I demonstrate my love for you today? And think about how Jesus demonstrated his love for you. In Romans chapter 5, verse 8, we know he demonstrated his love for us by dying on the cross for us. And when he demonstrated his love for us, it cost him a lot. If we're going to demonstrate our love for him, why would we think it would be different? Church, do you love Jesus? Why don't you just spend some time there and ask Jesus that question? Jesus, do I love you? And have a conversation with him. And then maybe you even want to ask him a second question. Jesus, what is one step I could take today to demonstrate my love for you? Church, do it with zeal. Spend time there with the Lord. Don't rush past those questions. And then in Psalm 35, I want to jump to something else. In I want to kind of make a connection between Psalm 35, verse 12 to 16, and I want to connect that back to Psalm 31, verses about 11 to 18. And in Psalm 31, 11 to 18, the people around David are treating him really poorly. The people closest to him, his neighbors and his friends, are kind of attacking him. They've turned their backs on him, and they're treating him horribly. They're abusing him. And then in Psalm 35, verse 12 to 16, not only are they abusing him, but here they're treating him completely unfairly. Like where he has, when they, in Psalm 35, verse 12, for instance, and 13, it says when they were going through a tough time, David mourned for them. Like he fasted and prayed for them. He kind of brought them, he put himself into their shoes and he was with them. Now when he's going through a tough time, what do? They just gang up and attack him. Completely treating him unfairly. He's been rejected and he is being betrayed. But what does he do in that place of betrayal? I think few things hurt as much as when those people closest to us reject us or betray us. It's the people that might be in our family, maybe our very close friends or people that we work with side by side. But church, we could do the same thing that David did, and he took that betrayal to who? He took it to the Lord and poured out his heart to the Lord. And when you do that, remember this: nobody understands rejection and betrayal like Jesus does. In John chapter 6, so many people turned away from following Jesus. The people were even called his disciples, that he turned to the 12 and said, are you guys leaving too? In Luke chapter 22, it talks about how when Peter denied Jesus 3 times in a row, there's this gripping moment when Jesus looks across the room to Peter and just exchanges a look. He knows what betrayal feels like more than anybody else. And so if you feel that way, if you feel like you've been rejected or betrayed by those who you love dearly and ought to love you the most, why don't you take that to the Lord and ask him questions like this? Jesus, how did you deal with rejection and betrayal? And how can I follow your example in that? Press into Jesus. He loves you more than you can imagine, and he will give you the strength to get through it. Enjoy your day with Jesus.